Hello, welcome back, and thank you guys for tuning in with me. I am Miss Owens, the math coach at Longwood Elementary, and we're going to start today's lesson learning about how to compare fractions. Before we begin, I want you guys to take a few minutes and listen to this read aloud called Give Me Half. It's a read aloud about learning how to divide things in half. I hope you enjoy, and I hope this helped you understand fractions.
Math Start, an award-winning series of 63 books that teach mathematical concepts through simple stories and visual learning. Give Me Half by Stuart J. Murphy, illustrated by G. Brian Karras, and read by Janet Ginsburg. A Math Start story about understanding halves from HarperCollins Children's Books. What if your brother had one whole pizza? You'd want half, of course. Just how much is half a pizza? And thinking ahead to dessert, what is a half pack of cupcakes? I have one whole pizza, and it's all for me. I'm going to get some pizza. Just you wait and see. I know you want some pizza, sis. You only get one slice. You'd better give me more than that. Why can't you be nice? You have to share the pizza. It must be split in two. The pieces should be cut the same for each of you. 1/2 pizza and 1/2 pizza make one whole pizza. 1/2 and 1/2 is 1. 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. What is that behind her back? The last can of juice, I think. If he takes some juice from me, I won't have much to drink. I gave you half of mine, so you must share yours too. I'll give you just a sip, but not until I'm through. Split the juice in half. Again, you have to share, and when you pour it out, make sure that you pour fair. 1/2 can of juice and 1/2 can of juice make one whole can of juice. 1/2 and 1/2 is 1. 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. I know she has some cupcakes. I saw her with a pack. I'm going to hide my cupcakes and save them for a snack. Hey, what's that on your chair? You'd better give me some. I'm going to eat them both myself and leave you just a crumb. Your cupcakes must be shared, and do I need repeat? You both get half the pack, and don't you two dare cheat. 1 cupcake and 1 cupcake make a pack of 2 cupcakes. 1 and 1 is 2. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 1 is 1/2 of 2. I have a stack of cookies, and you get just 1 bite. You'd better give me half that stack, or else I'll start a fight. Hey, wait! Too late. Food fight. There are cookies on the floor. There's pizza everywhere. There's juice spilled on the table and sticky stuff under my chair. We're going to be in trouble. We've made a great big mess. But I have made no more than you, and you have made no less. We'd better each clean half. There's so much work to do. We'll be done in half the time, if Buddy helps us too. Each Math Start book includes a special 2-page section filled with activities designed to extend the learning beyond the story. For more about Stuart J. Murphy's Math Start books and about the Main Street Kids Club, the Math Start musical, please visit stuartjmurphy.com.
So thank you for tuning in to today's lesson. In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to compare fractions. So when you compare things, you want to take a look at which is more and which is less. And sometimes there is no more or less because the amounts are equivalent. Now that word equivalent means equal to or the same as. So we are going to also use the greater than, less than, and equal to symbols. So we'll go ahead and write out the word equal equivalent. And we are going to go ahead and go to our vocabulary, our math vocabulary. I'll give you guys a few minutes to get your materials for that. And we will go ahead and log in our vocabulary words. So the first word that I want you guys to jot down is the word equivalent. And to give you guys a really good illustration of what that word equivalent means, we're going to take a look at some fraction strips that are equivalent or equal to. So take, for instance, if I was to take 2/4, line them up side by side like we do, and examine their and compare them to 1/2. We notice that the size of 2/4 compared to 1/2 is those two fractions are equivalent. They are the same size. They are equal to. So I would write that down as 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. So on my vocabulary wall, we're also going to record that here. 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. So we're also going to take a look at the different symbols that go along with comparing numbers. Some of these symbols you may have seen when you were comparing whole numbers, maybe in 4th grade or another grade. But the concept of these numbers, these symbols, are pretty much the same. The only thing changes is what we are using as we are comparing using these symbols. So, and those symbols are your equal to symbol, less than, and your greater than symbol. Let me just fix this. And we are going to write that out. Equals. Make sure you guys are writing this down. Is less than, is greater than. One way that I like to think about these symbols is an alligator's mouth. The alligator's mouth is open to the larger portion. It's open to the larger fraction because he likes candy bars. He wants to eat the larger candy bar like Miss Owens. And then the back part where his mouth is not open, I always tell my students that his back is turned away from the smaller number, the is less than number, because he would rather eat the larger amount. And then the equal symbol means that the two fractions they're the same. So let's go ahead and examine some problems where we can get a better understanding of how to compare fractions. So let's go ahead and write some examples. So we know that 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4. Well, let's take a look at 1/16. And let's compare 1/16 to 1/2. Which is larger? The 1/2. Which is smaller? The 1/16. So I would write that as 1/16 is less than 1/2. And if you look at the symbol, the mouth is open to the half because it's larger, and the gator's mouth is away from the 16th because it's smaller. We are going to read this together. 1/16 is less than 1/2. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at 1/2. And we are going to compare it to 1/8. Which is greater, 1/2 or 1/8? 1/2. So then that means that 1/8 is smaller or less than 1/2. And we are going to write it as so. 1/2 is greater than 1/8. And I need you to read that with me. 1/2 is greater than 1/8. And we knew from earlier that 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4. So right now we're going to take this time to record these expressions. We're going to add them to our vocabulary word list so that we can have really good examples to refer back to. So when we look at equals 2, we can look at how 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4. And when we look at is less than 1/16 is less than 1/2. And when we look at is greater than 1/2 is greater than 1/8. So make sure that you guys are copying the vocabulary down from the lesson. And be sure to turn to the back of your workspace workbook to the glossary, and you want to read the vocabulary words. So you want to write them down in your vocabulary workspace, but you want to read the definition of these words. Okay, so we are going to make fraction trains to compare fractions. So what that means is you're going to take your fraction strips and you're going to line them up, and you're going to use your eyes to measure which fraction is greater and which is less, or if they are in fact equivalent. So the first fractions that we want to compare is, we want to compare 3/8 to 9/16. So I'm going to go ahead and take out 3/8. And I want to make sure that they're lined up nice and neat, as straight as possible. And how many 16ths? 9. Look at that. 2 16ths match the equivalency of 1/8. All right, so here I go, nice and neat, 9/16. Which is more and which is less? 3/8 and 9/16. The 9/16 are more. They're greater than the 3/8. So that means that the 3/8 are actually less than the 9/16. Now, the way that we measure which is greater is by looking at which takes up more space. Obviously, I have more of the 16 pieces, but that doesn't allow me to accurately measure why it's more. The 16s aren't more because there's more pieces. The sixteenths are more because the sixteenths take up more space than the eighths. So that means 3/8 is less than 9/16. Now, if I was to take a half and I put it up here to help me help me understand, I can see that 8 of those sixteenths is equivalent to half. 9/16 is more than 8/16. So I know that 9/16 is going to be greater than half. Speaking of half, prior to me starting this video, you guys watched a read aloud called Give Me Half, where you really took a close look at what it means to divide something in half. If I have 16 sixteenths in one whole, because if you take a whole and you fold it into 16 sections and cut them up, you're going to have 16 parts that together make that whole. Half of those would be 8, because 8 is half of 16. So it would take 8/16 to match half. 9/16 is greater than half. If I bring my half up here to where the eighths are, 3/8 is less than half. So here I'm looking at a fraction that's greater than half and a fraction that's less than half. Well, if 3/8 is less than half, it's going to be less than 9/16, because 9/16 is greater than half. How many eighths would I need to make a half? I would need 4. And I don't have 4. I have 3. So let's just wrap this up and then we'll move on to another example. 3/8, repeat after me, 3/8 is less than 9/16. Let's take a look at another fraction. Let's compare 3/4 to 5/8. Now, what I like about this is you can use the fraction strips to help you figure out which is more or which is less. Do you think 3/4 will be greater than 5/8? Or do you think 3/4 will be less than 5/8? Let's find out. So we need 3/4 and we need 5/8. So what do you think? 3/4 and 5/8. How did they compare? Which is more and which is less? We're looking at this model. The 3/4 is greater. Why do you think 3/4 is greater than 5/8? Absolutely, because they take up more space. If you look closely, 2/8 matches the size of just 1/4. 2/8 is equivalent to 1/4. So when you get to 4/8, you match the equivalency of 2/4. You'd need one more eighth to be equivalent to 3/4. In this case, the 3/4 is greater than the 5/8. Let's read it together. 3/4 is greater than 5/8. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop for now. Again, prior to this video, you guys watched a read aloud called Give Me Half, and it gave you the basic concept of what half of something looks like. Well, Ms. Owens, why is that important in this lesson? Because we are going to also use our fraction strip of half to guide us. Fractions that are the same size, we want to pay attention to fractions that are equivalent to half, fractions that are greater than half, and fractions that are less than half. So we're going to go ahead and move into your workspace, page 9. You're going to use your fraction strips to continue comparing fractions. And we will finish, when you're finished with this assignment, you can play a game of cover or uncover in the digital lessons or in your workspace workbook. Okay, now we are back to your digital lessons. So we're going to take a further look into comparing fractions, looking on your workspace page 9. Using the same strategies, using your fraction strips, you're going to continue to compare fractions. So let's take a look at the directions. And I'm on this page right here. It says, use your fraction pieces to make fraction trains. So you're comparing 3/8 to 9/16. And once you place the 3/8 in line like a train, one beside the other, no spaces in between, and underneath, place the 9/116 pieces, making a train. You're going to use your eyes to see which fraction train is greater or less, or are they equivalent to each other? Is the 3/8 greater, or is the 9/16 greater? The 9/16 are greater. The two trains are not equivalent. The 9/16 is greater, therefore, the 3/8 are less. So if you can direct your eyes over into box number 2, you will see the comparison written out. 3/8 is less than 9/16. In the boxes, you are going to write the symbols. One of the symbols. Less than, greater than, or equal to. So let's take a look at number 1. 3/4 and 5/8. Some of the fractions you can use your knowledge of half to try to maybe estimate which fraction would be greater or less if they will be equivalent to each other. But don't forget to align your fractions strips to create a train with your fraction strips so that you can check your answers for sure. So you have 3/4 and you're going to compare it to 5/8. I want you to think about how the size of a fourth. Think about the size of an eighth. Think about how many eighths are equal to 1/4. Now go ahead and place your trains, create your fraction trains, and solve. You're going to do the same thing for the rest of the problems on this page. Now, when you are finished, you can go and play Cover Up, or you can play a different game that's similar to Cover Up, but it's called Uncover. So in your workspace book on page 8, you will see the rules for Uncover. I'm going to go ahead and go through the rules, and then right after we're finished, you're going to work on comparing pairs on page 9. So for the game Uncover, you're going to need a red cube. And I'll show you how to access Uncover on the digital lessons. Now, uncover means to take off. When we played Cover Up, you were covering up the whole fraction strip. When you start the game of Uncover, you are going to cover up your whole fraction strip with two pieces, the two halves. When you roll the dice, whatever the dice lands on, that's what you take off of your whole. Now, let's say you roll 1/2. You have 2 halves covering your 1 whole. You can remove one of the halves. If you don't want to remove one of the halves, you can take one off and exchange it with fraction pieces that are equivalent to that whole. You could do 2/4, 4/8, 8/16, or you can mix the fractional pieces like 2/8 and 1/4. Then your partner is going to check to make sure that you have aligned your pieces correctly. But when you're finished, you need to notify your partner that you're finished by saying done. If you're playing by yourself, you can check to see if your fractions are aligned properly. And then it's time to go again. The goal of this game is to remove all of the fractions that are on top of the whole. If you trade out the fraction strips for equivalent pieces, you're going to prolong the game. This game could have ended easily by me removing 1/2 and then rolling the dice again. The only thing is, if I roll the dice and I get 1/4, I can't remove 1/4, so I would have to exchange that remaining piece for equivalent fractions and then roll again to see if I get a number that I can remove. And that's how you play the game. So go ahead and work on your assignment on page 9 of your workspace. Don't forget to create your fraction trains. And when you're finished, have at it. Challenge yourself. You can play uncover, or you can decide to play cover. Uncover. So we went ahead and covered it up. Roll the dice. 1/8. I don't have 1/8, so I am going to add some equivalent parts here. I'm going to add some 1/8 up here on one of these parts. So maybe next time if I roll 1/8, I can remove it. I can uncover it. Okay. All right, let's roll it again. Now I have 1/8. I can remove it. I need to remove the 1/8. Oh, come on. There we go. Roll it again. I can remove 1/2. Roll it again. Remove 1/8. And the goal is to see what can I take off of this hole to create another hole. Okay, I don't have any more 1/8s there, but I do have a 1/4 here. So I'm just going to match some equivalent pieces and then roll again. So you pretty much see how the game goes. And the goal is to match one hole. And I'll keep rolling and so forth and so on. Well, thank you guys for tuning in with me. I know you guys are trying your best and I'm super duper proud of you. So I want you guys to stay focused and give it all that you have. I hope you're enjoying these fraction lessons and I'll see you next time. Take care.